Samsung Electronics management and labor resumed bonus negotiations on Wednesday after post-mediation talks broke down, with the labor minister stepping in to broker a deal and stop a nationwide strike. President Lee Jae-myung slammed Israel over the seizure of a Gaza-bound aid flotilla carrying a Korean activist, saying the move violated the minimum norms of international law. The AFC Women's Champions League semi-final between South Korea's Suwon FC women and North Korea's Daegohyang FC is underway in Suwon. This is the first visit by a North Korean sports team to the South in 8 years. With just 1 day remaining before a potential strike at Samsung Electronics, the management and union are continuing talks in search of a breakthrough even at this hour. For more details, we have our An Sang-jin on the line. So, Sang-jin, walk us through the situation at the moment.
Right, Tommy. Samsung Electronics and its labor union have resumed negotiations this afternoon, starting from around 4 p.m. Labor Minister Kim Yong-hoon stepped in to continue mediation, highlighting the government's growing concern over the potential economic impact of a full-scale strike. His main goal is to persuade both sides to compromise by presenting a range of alternatives on key disputed issues. Now, this comes as the labor union had earlier officially announced on their website around 10 a.m. that they will be proceeding with a nationwide strike as planned to exercise their rights.
There is deep regret that the mediation process ended without management making a final decision. We will enter a full strike starting from tomorrow.
Samsung Electronics had also expressed regret over the collapse in negotiations, saying it would continue efforts to avoid what it described as the worst-case scenario.
We apologize for failing to reach an agreement and will continue efforts to resolve the dispute.
In a statement, management argued that it had already accepted most of the union's demands regarding performance-based bonuses, but added that the persistent demand for compensation for profit-losing divisions would be unacceptable. It also warned that accepting such demands could undermine its core principle that compensation should follow performance.
So the situation appears serious enough for the government to step in as well, Sang-jin, with a growing speculation over possible state intervention. Tell us more about that.
Well, the Labor Ministry declined to confirm whether it is considering invoking emergency arbitration powers, which could suspend strike action in industries deemed critical to the national economy. But as we can see, officials continue to stress that dialogue remains the preferred solution. The chair of the National Labor Relations Commission dismissed speculation over emergency intervention earlier today, downplaying the likelihood of immediate government action. The Blue House had expressed deep regret over the failure of the mediation process and urged both sides to continue negotiations, with President Lee Jae-myung also weighing in by stating that while collective labor action is legitimate, there must be an appropriate line. Officials say that with negotiations continuing, they may reach an agreement before the strike tomorrow, so we will have to keep an eye on the latest.
Sure, Sang-jin, thank you for the latest. And the prospects of a planned walkout amid unresolved labor disputes rattled the Korean stock market today. Samsung shares tumbled over 4% at one point during trade on Wednesday, before regaining ground to end up 0.1%. The benchmark Kospi lost 0.8% from its previous session on Tuesday to close at 7,208.9. Now, pundits believe the local bourse will remain volatile amid efforts to ensure an amicable settlement over bonuses at Samsung Electronics. Now, with 1 day left till official campaigning begins for the June 3rd local and parliamentary by-elections, both the ruling and main opposition parties moved into full campaign mode. The ruling Democratic Party said the nationwide elections will serve as the first major political test since the launch of the Lee Jae-myung administration, as the party plans to campaign on themes of judging the insurrection and reviving the people's livelihoods. And the main opposition People Power Party argued that another victory for the DP would allow the government and the ruling party to dominate not only the executive and legislative branches, but also local governments. The party added it would focus its campaign on the need to keep the administration in check. Meanwhile, the National Election Commission chairman pledged a fair and transparent election management ahead of the official campaign period, ensuring the election becomes an opportunity for national unity. President Lee Jae-myung has heavily criticized the incident where South Korean activists bound for Gaza were recently seized by Israeli forces. He went on to mention an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Yoon Jung-min reports.
President Lee Jae-myung was highly critical of a humanitarian aid flotilla carrying 2 South Korean activists recently being seized by Israeli forces on its way to the Gaza Strip. Presiding over a cabinet meeting on Wednesday, he asked what legal grounds Israel has for intercepting the ship in waters near Gaza.
자원봉사 뭐 이런 거 가겠다는 제3국 선박을 지금 납포를 하고 그중에 체포를 해가지고 지금 감금을 했다는데 이게 타당한 일입니까? 이스라엘 영해예요?
They were not in the Israeli territorial waters, but Israel maintains control over the entire Gaza area through its military operation.
The president criticized, saying that basic international norms were not kept.
여하튼 우리 국민들을 국제법적으로 타당하지 않은 사유로 잡아간 거 맞잖아요. 제가 보기엔 너무 심해요. 너무 비인도적이고.
Mentioning a European move to enforce an ICC arrest warrant against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Lee said South Korea should also make its own decision. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
A Korean oil tanker has passed through the Strait of Hormuz and is continuing its voyage after Seoul called on Tehran to ensure safe passage through the strategic waterway. The Foreign Ministry says the vessel crossed the strait on Wednesday with around 10 Korean crew members on board. Now Seoul has continued requesting the safety and free navigation of all vessels, including Korean ships, through 4 phone calls between foreign ministers, the dispatch of a special envoy to Tehran, and diplomatic channels involving both countries' foreign ministries and embassies. Now, the vessel is known to be the HMM-operated tanker Universal Winner, which had earlier been stranded near Qatar. As Seoul says, no fee has paid to Tehran for this transit. Earlier on Wednesday, Foreign Minister Do Hyun told the National Assembly Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee that the tanker set sail on Tuesday, carrying roughly 2 million barrels of crude oil. The government plans to continue working with Iran and other relevant countries to ensure the safety and passage of Korean vessels still in the strait. U.S. President Donald Trump renewed his warning on Iran on Tuesday, saying Washington could launch military strikes on Tehran within days if ongoing negotiations break down. Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that the United States may still strike Iran if negotiations fail, warning that military action could come within days. Speaking at the White House, Trump said he had been about an hour away from approving an attack before postponing it following a new proposal from Tehran aimed at ending the recent U.S.-Israeli conflict.
I was an hour away. We were all set to go. Yeah, it was all done. The boats, the ships are all loaded. They're loaded to the brim, and we were all set to start.
Trump said Iran's leaders are pushing for a deal, but stressed Washington remains prepared to act militarily if talks break down. He also revealed that Chinese President Xi Jinping promised during their summit last week that Beijing would not provide weapons or military equipment to Iran. According to Axios, Trump met with his national security team on Monday evening to review military options. The report said several Arab leaders urged caution, warning that Iranian retaliation could threaten regional oil facilities and infrastructure. Meanwhile, Iran's latest proposal reportedly calls for an end to hostilities across the region, the withdrawal of U.S. forces from areas near Iran, sanctions relief, and the release of frozen Iranian assets. Iran also says Washington has shown more flexibility on allowing limited peaceful nuclear activity under international supervision, though the United States has not confirmed any concessions in the talks. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's Suwon FC women and North Korea's Daegohyang FC are now facing off in the AFC Women's Champions League semifinal on South Korean soil. Now, while much attention has been given to this crucial match between teams from the two Koreas, we go live to Suwon City to connect with our culture correspondent Park Gonu. Gonu, how's the match in the rain going so far?
Yes, Sami, right now the match between Suwon FC women and Daegohyang FC has been underway for more than an hour now in the latter half of the game. The current score is at 1-0. Suwon FC, Sejiki Harui just scored one goal. And today's match held at Suwon Sports Complex as it's faced with the heavy rain being a major variable. Suwon has seen over 36 millimeters of rain as of 5 p.m. compared to earlier forecasts predicting up to around 20 millimeters. Leading Suwon is veteran Ji So-yeon along with national team players including Kim Hee-ri. Suwon advanced to the semifinals after defeating defending champion Uan Jiangda Women's FC in the quarterfinals. But against Daegohyang in a group stage match last November in Myanmar, Suwon suffered a 3-0 loss. Here's what the captains of each team had to say ahead of the game.
North Korean players are always very physical when they play, and they also use a lot of abusive language. So our players shouldn't back down either. If they curse at us, we should curse back. If they kick us, we should kick back.
The team's atmosphere is very positive. We will do our best to repay expectations of our people.
And the winners will advance to the final this Saturday at 2 p.m. also in Suwon. There, the winner of today's game will face Tokyo Verdy Belleza, who defeated Melbourne City FC 3-1 earlier today. The tournament champion will receive $1 million in prize money.
Well, we'll have to wait a little longer to find out who comes out on top tonight. Kano, now, this rare inter-Korean showdown has attracted major attention both at home and abroad, with thousands of fans packing the stadium to support the players, I hear.
That's right, Dami. All 7,000 seats available to the public were sold out in just 12 hours after ticket sales opened on May 12th.
It's surprising to see them play, even though it's raining a lot. I hope they do their best and don't get hurt.
As we all come from the same people, it's okay if either team wins.
And today, around 3,000 spectators from more than 200 civic groups also gathered at the stadium to cheer for both teams.
I am so happy to be here. The North delegation's visit feels like rain after a drought, as it seems we have recently moved further away from unification. I hope the match goes well, with nobody getting hurt.
And the Unification Ministry announced it would provide around $200,000 under the name of the Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund to help with the joint support efforts. The ministry added that details of the funding would be disclosed publicly for transparency. And Sports Minister Choi Young also is known to be here tonight as well to watch the game. And we just learned that North Korea's team also scored one more. So now the current score is at 1-1. And that's all I have for you now.
So, with Suwon FC women facing North Korea's Daegohyang Women's FC, some are wondering if this could be a chance for the two Koreas to improve their ties. For more on this, we have our Kim Bo-kyung here in the studio. Bo-kyung, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Bo-kyung, so it's been several years since North Korean athletes visited the South. Walk us through the significance of the North Korean team's visit to the South Korean soil.
Right, so a North Korean women's football team going up against the South Korean side is indeed a rare rare scene to watch. It has been 8 years since North Korean athletes last visited South Korea to compete in a sporting event, which was the International Table Tennis Federation World Tour Grand Finals in Incheon in December 2018. It also marks the first visit by a North Korean women's football team to the South since the 2014 Incheon Asian Games. And adding on to that, it has significant meaning as this is the first such event since late 2023 when Kim Jong-un declared inter-Korean relations to be a hostile relationship between the two separate states.
You know, that's exactly why there's been so much attention given to this match, specifically as many are expecting it to be a way to ease tensions here on the Korean Peninsula. Let's talk about that.
Right. So one expert who I talked to said we need to be cautious against putting too much political significance to this event, as this was North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's pragmatic approach to show off the superiority of the regime by, if possible, winning the match. You see, at the 9th Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea held in this February, the regime reaffirmed a hostile two-state relationship and stated that what remains between the two Koreas is only cold, interest-based calculation and a firm, resolute response. In that sense, the expert underlined that sending this women's team to South Korea can be seen as evidence that there are still practical benefits and national interests involved. Listen to this.
If the women's football team from North Korea performs well, it can show the strength of the regime, raise public morale, and improve the country's image internationally as a more normal state. In that sense, it can serve several purposes at once.
Well, the fact that Kim convened a meeting with commanders of the party on the day of sending the soccer team surely shows that its two-state hostile policy is just being emboldened, I must say.
Right. As you said, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un urged the military commanders to strengthen the frontline units along the military demarcation line. According to the regime's state-run Korean Central News Agency on Monday, Kim said that advancement of military technology at key units plays a critical role in effective deterrence of war, and highlighted the policy of turning the southern border into an impregnable fortress. For this, he announced plans to reorganize the military command structure and stressed the need to overhaul the military training system to reflect changes in modern warfare. The fact that this meeting was held by the time the football team arrived in South Korea just shows the regime's intention to block the South Korean government's efforts to use the team's visit as a chance to improve inter-Korean relations.
North Korea sees physical barriers and fortifications along the border as a key symbol of separating the two Koreas into distinct states. In that context, even though a football match between the two sides is being held in South Korea, this appears to be a gesture showing that its two-state policy toward the South has not changed.
Still, the expert added that this could be a small but important step toward peace on the peninsula.
If small trust is built through this football match, it could become a useful stepping stone for peaceful coexistence in the medium to long term.
So it seems we would have to be cautious when it comes to dealing with the issue publicly and maintain the purity of the sports event itself, hoping in the long term it could serve as a key way to resolve inter-Korean issues within the framework of international norms.
I see. Bo-kyung, thank you for the wrap-up tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Seoul and Washington are set to launch bilateral working groups in the coming weeks, including efforts to advance South Korea's push for nuclear-powered submarines. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young has this report.
Korea and the United States will soon launch working groups to implement key agreements on civil nuclear cooperation and nuclear-powered submarines, as agreed between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump last year. Seoul's Foreign Ministry said on Wednesday that the U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Alison Hooker plans to lead a U.S. delegation to Korea in the coming weeks. This follows talks with First Vice Foreign Minister Park Yun-joo in Washington on Tuesday local time. The U.S. State Department said this would be an interagency delegation to launch bilateral working groups aimed at implementing understandings reached during Trump's visit to Korea last October. Those understandings were outlined in a joint fact sheet spanning both economic and security cooperation. On the security side, the allies are looking to advance major strategic projects, including Seoul's development of nuclear-powered submarines and greater rights over civilian uranium enrichment and spent nuclear fuel reprocessing for peaceful purposes. According to materials submitted by the Defense Ministry on Wednesday to the National Assembly, the Navy has formally asked the Joint Chiefs of Staff to approve operational requirements for nuclear-powered submarines, including capability targets, force size and deployment timelines. A broader government plan is also expected later this month, setting out construction principles and non-proliferation guidelines. At Tuesday's meeting, Park and Hooker also discussed ways to further develop the Korea-U.S. alliance, with Washington reiterating its commitment of extended deterrence to Seoul. The talks also touched on economic cooperation and regional security issues. Both sides reaffirmed the importance of freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz and other international waterways, as instability in the Middle East keeps pressure on global supply routes. Park also briefed U.S. officials on this week's Korea-Japan summit in Andong, reaffirming Seoul's push for stronger ties with Tokyo and trilateral cooperation with Washington. Park earlier met with Andrew Baker, a senior White House National Security Council official. Seoul says both sides backed close coordination on joint fact sheet consultations, while also discussing the recent U.S.-China summit, Korean Peninsula issues, and the Middle East. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin said the two countries' relations have reached an unprecedentedly high level at a joint press conference following their summit in Beijing. The two leaders also signed a series of agreements covering trade, technology, and strategic cooperation, including a declaration calling for a more multipolar world order. In their joint declaration, Moscow and Beijing warned against what they call the return of the law of the jungle, criticizing some countries' attempts to manage the world unilaterally and impose their interests on the entire world. It's Cannes Film Festival this week, and with the 79th edition now underway, Korean cinema is drawing global attention with a strong presence from its films and filmmakers. Our Cho Young-eun follows this report.
As a mysterious beast transforms an isolated village into a living nightmare, a desperate fight for survival erupts into catastrophic levels of chaos, captivating viewers with the overwhelming suspense. One of the most highly anticipated films at the 79th Cannes Film Festival, the Korean film Hope is competing for the festival's highest honor, the Palme d'Or. Returning to Cannes for the first time in a decade, director Na Hong-jin has once again captured global attention with a work many are describing as an entirely new cinematic genre.
It started with thinking about how I could approach a crime story, and then how to make it feel different from my previous work. As I kept turning it over in my mind, the story somehow ended up in outer space.
Following its world premiere on Sunday, expectations are rising for the film's success at the closing ceremony this weekend.
Of course, the actors also did a great job of performing those moments in a way that would allow the audience to take them as witty and humorous. But I'm still curious to see how the audience will take it.
At Cannes this year, Korean film director Park Chan-wook also drew attention, serving as a jury member while receiving France's highest cultural honor. Reflecting on the growing global influence of Korean cinema, Park noted that the international film industry itself has become more open to diverse voices.
Korea is no longer considered a peripheral country in cinema compared to 20 years ago. I wouldn't necessarily say Korean films themselves suddenly entered at the center. Rather, I believe the global film industry has become more open to embracing a wider diversity of films.
Meanwhile, the team of Kunche also made headlines following the film's world premiere in the midnight screenings, a non-competition section at the festival. Director Yeon Sang-ho once again placed Korean cinema at the center of the global film scene with its new zombie thriller. Following their appearance at Cannes, the team spoke to the press in Seoul ahead of the film's official release in Korea, where actors including Chun Ji-yeon reflected on celebrating their first official invitation to the festival with a Korean film.
Introducing our film, there was such a meaningful and grateful experience. But at the same time, I felt like I came back with even more energy. As an actor, it gave me great courage and strength in presenting Gunchae.
As Korean filmmakers and actors continue to leave a strong impression on the international stage, their growing influence highlights not only the originality of Korean cinema, but also Korea's expanding cultural presence in the global film industry. Jo Young-eun, Arirang News.
We're currently seeing rain across much of the country. Through tomorrow, mountainous areas of Jeju Island could see more than 120 millimeters of rain, while the southern coast may receive over 80. Inland areas across the central regions are also expected to pick up between 30 and 80 millimeters. Heavy rain advisories are currently in effect for parts of the central region, Gangwon-do, Jeollanam-do, Gyeongsang-nam-do provinces, and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. Strong winds will accompany the rain as well. Nationwide wind gusts could reach around 15 meters per second, so please take care. The rain has cooled down the unusually early summer heat, but once it clears, temperatures are expected to rise again on Friday. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 16 degrees, Chuncheon at 14 degrees, Busan at 19 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 20 degrees, Daejeon 22 degrees, Daegu 23 degrees. Most of the rain is expected to ease by tomorrow afternoon, although parts of the east coast of Gangwon-do province and Jeju Island may continue to see showers into the evening.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.